What's going on, everyone, and welcome to First Pitch 305. This is Season 2, Episode 2 of First Pitch 305, and I'm your host, Alex Aguirre, and this is the Marlins and Baseball podcast for LemonCityLive.com. You can listen to this episode wherever you find your podcast. It can be Apple or Spotify, and you can listen and watch this podcast on YouTube or on LemonCityLive.com. And guys, for this episode, joining me, he's a returner. He was on season 1 a few times. He covers the Marlins for Fish on First, and you can also catch his amazing work on the Paws Up Podcast. That's a podcast here on LemonCityLive.com where they cover all of FIU athletics. Joining me for today's episode is the one and only Kevin Barral. Kevin, what's going on, my man?
What's up, man? It's been a while. I was wondering where this podcast went, but I'm glad you brought it back to life here, season 2. I'm excited to be your first guest of the year, and man, there's a lot to talk about with this Marlins team, despite, the lack of movement on the major league side of things.
No, absolutely. And yes, this podcast wasn't a bit of a hibernation, but we're back. We were a bit dormant for 2023, but we're back now for the 2024 season. And yeah, I'm glad to get this thing up and running again. And I appreciate you joining me, Kevin. And for those listening, Kevin joined, or not joined, but he, I guess, attended the Marlins Fan Fest this year. I didn't have the opportunity to go because of time conflicts with work, but that's okay because I had plenty of other friends and media members that did attend the event, including Kevin. So this episode, we're going to break down his experience at Fan Fest, what went on there, any breaking news, anything that came to the eye for Kevin, any specific interviews that he heard or conducted. And then from there, we're going to go into kind of get Kevin's take on the offseason so far for the Marlins. If you want to listen to the first episode of this season, I kind of give a more in-depth breakdown of how the offseason went for the Marlins. But I want to get Kevin's take, and then we're going to round off this episode talking about in more detail, because I sprinkled in a little bit of details in last episode, but we're going to get deeper with some spring training talk and position battles and any players to keep an eye on. Because the Marlins do have, some players that could make an impact. Like, remember last year with Dane Myers, no one really saw him coming, and he had a good stretch to kind of help the Marlins in, when Jazz went down with an injury. So we'll get into that towards the end of the episode and players to look out for in spring training. But let's get into Fan Fest, Kevin. Talk to me now. I know you were there. Marlins had some breaking news in terms of their new uniforms, but before we get into the new unis, let's go more from the overall atmosphere. Not a lot of moves were made this offseason for the Marlins, coming off a really fun season. Nothing really to look forward to or build upon so far based off the moves they made. What was the vibe at Fan Fest? How was it? What did you feel compared to last year's Fan Fest? Because I know you were there as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the lack of movement. I mean, the guys they even brought in, Vidal Brujan and Christian Betancourt, they weren't even there. They were playing for their prospective Winter League teams. So the only additions they really did make, they weren't even there. But, aside from that, it was from 4 to 10, so it was weird. It was on a Friday, which certainly, I mean, this living in Miami as well. It's rush hour, traffic. I mean, it's the worst possible time to set that up at. But, again, things happen. Skip had to go to New York to receive his Manager of the Year award. Things happened, so they had to do it on a Friday. I was there from around, I want to say 4 o'clock to like almost 8. And for the most part, from when I was there, it felt a little bit dead. I think that's the best way to put it. Obviously, it's a Friday. I think that's the big thing, too. I mean, if this was on a Saturday, maybe things would be different. But again, there was not – I mean, from the media side of things, I could give it to you. It was pretty good. We got the access we needed. We spoke to Skip after. I mean, it was great. But the fan side, it felt a little difficult to reach out to these players. I mean, you would see the guys walking around and this and that, but it was a little difficult to actually, talk to these players, get to sit down with them, fans, just looking at it in terms of a mere fan perspective. And unlike last year, when you were able to go on the field, throw with baseball, do whatever you want, they didn't even have the field open. The only thing that was only open exclusively to Marlins members. So as we saw, I think this is the second year they're doing this. You could swing for your seats. So it's essentially how it is. You swing, and if the ball lands on a certain spot, that's how much you get for your season tickets, or the Marlins will help you, So if you hit a home run, you get $10,000, and essentially your tickets are free. So, yeah, I mean, it was certainly a little disappointing in the terms of you would have kind of hoped that the Marlins would have done that swing for your seats maybe another day, only exclusively for Marlins members, so they could actually open the field. But I don't even think they had the tour of the clubhouse like they do most years. they didn't have a lot of the stuff they did last year, and it was a little disappointing. For the most part, the atmosphere outside was a little dead until kind of the night came along, and that's when they started bringing out bands to play. And that's, I would say around like the 7:30 markers when it really started to fill up as well. You would see a lot of people coming in. I mean, that's already rush hour is kind of over by then. People are out of their jobs. You can make it there still with about 3 hours left, where you had the fireworks show, the Diamond Dash if you're, a kid, and you had opportunities like that. And that was certainly a good part. And then, as we know, the State of the Marlins was the other event that went on there. So that was certainly interesting, especially the fan portion of it. So then the last question we got was a Sixto Sanchez question. So wasn't expecting that to come out there. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was a good experience. I enjoy it always. It's one of my favorite events of the year. You get to see all the players there. Only 40-man guys. We saw about almost all of them, to be honest with you. And yeah, I mean, no Jazz, unfortunately. There were issues out of his hand that he could not make it. But, once that comes out officially, everyone will understand it. Yeah, Fan Fest was good. I enjoy it always. I'm always out there with the Fish on First guys and, media members. So good to catch up with all those people and good to see, fans and all that stuff and see how they react to some of the new players on this team.
Wow, that's awesome to hear in terms of your experience, but kind of disappointing in regards to the other events or features that were presented last year that weren't, I guess, available or even happening this Fan Fest for this year. But that's cool though, in terms of, I guess, majority of from the 40-man roster, majority of those players were there. Sandy was there. Obviously, they highlighted him a lot via social media. So that's good to see that, the top players on the roster are still making appearance even in the off season. And you mentioned as well, because this hit me like weird as well, the time from 4 to 10 on a Friday, and I totally agree with you, Kevin, in the sense that an event like this, especially when you didn't have a very successful offseason, it's going to be like just plain and simple like that. It hasn't been a successful offseason whatsoever. And then you come up with, and I get it's the whole timing with Skip. So that makes sense. But if let's say that, like I hope, for Marlins, for their front office and ownership, I hope that if Skip didn't have this award acceptance that day, they would have at least planned to have this Fan Fest on a Saturday or a Sunday to make it more accessible for a lot more people. Because let's be real here, 4:00 on a Friday in Miami, like it's not a good time to start any event. People are wanting to get home or wanting to get back home and shower, get ready to go out or do something like on a Friday night. Like it's just, this is more of a Sunday afternoon type of event. That's what I feel, but that's a huge coordination process, especially with parking and police presence, things like that. It's a big ordeal, but still though, I just wish that it was on a different day for more people to go. That's all I really want is for the fan experience. But so moving on to, what were you saying, Kevin?
The only thing I was going to say, just sorry to cut you off there,
no,
but
you're good.
Look at the Braves, for example. And, obviously, sure. Yeah, let's say that. I mean, Ronald Acuna wasn't there. He was in New York receiving his award. They did this on a Saturday. He was there. He wasn't there. I mean, obviously everyone wants to see Skip, but let's be honest, guys. I mean, the 40-man's still going to be there. No offense to Skip, I don't think many people are going to want to get his autograph, although, he was a manager of the year. But aside from that, I mean, you kind of start to realize too, they presented Skip with these custom Jordans. They had him there for the State of the Marlins. So there's the reasoning of why you wanted him. But again, you have to think about it. A lot of people, no offense to the fans, but they probably don't know who Skip Schumacher is until you go to Fan Fest. A lot of these fans that go to Fan Fest, they go because it's free and they're probably going to end up getting an autograph. That's at the end of the day. But they'll have another year. There's no City Caribe. There's no, at that point, you hope there's no more distractions outside of that. But, my only suggestion would have been maybe move it back a week. Maybe do this on a Sunday. You could have done this a little earlier, too, on a Sunday, because I know a lot of people don't like to go out on Sundays, whatever the case may be. But, there were definitely alternate options to do it. But, it's still the fact that it did fill up pretty well at the end, especially. That's, I guess, what they were trying to go for. And they obviously did it. Apparently over 15,000 people were there. So good to know.
Well, that is somewhat promising. At least it did fill out towards the end of the event. And we'll see moving forward how the attendance looks when the season begins, because their attendance did improve a lot last season. Their highest attendance since the opening year of Marlins Park, now Lone Depot Park, since 2012. So that's a good sign. So let's see if they can build off that from a fan perspective. And sticking with Fan Fest, Kevin, I want to go now into the new unis, the new uniforms.
Yeah.
They were revealed at Fan Fest. I want to get your take on it, obviously, but just to give a little preview for the listeners, the Marlins unveiled two new uniforms, a baby blue or a blue, kind of like a light blue uniform, and then they redid or retouched their black uniforms. And from according to our editor and technically our boss here at Lemon City Live, he had some connections with the Marlins clubhouse guys, and and according to them, and he related to me, they basically told Edwin that the Marlins and pretty much in all MLB teams, their contract with Nike, it's a 4-in-1 deal, 4-and-1. So it's 4 uniforms plus one custom or one, I guess, fun jersey. And that one for the Marlins is that the Red City Connect. So they're keeping that one. The one uniform that I guess is the odd man out is the one that the fan favorite. I guess going back to the fan, it's just one of those weird things. But the old school teal pinstripe, early 90s Marlins uniforms with the teal hats and everything, that is gone for 2024. The blue uniforms are cool, and I do like the way they retouched the black one. So it's the blue, the black, the road grays, and the home whites, and then the Red City, City Connect jerseys. Thank you. And so I want. So Kevin, what do you think about those new unis? I'm disappointed that the old school uniforms are out, but the Marlins still have some nice uniforms, and I'm glad that they kind of revamped it a little bit.
I definitely wondered what they were going to do about the teal, because obviously that was the big hit this year. It was everywhere. I mean, there's no other way to say it. The Flashback Friday events were a hit. You were able to bring back a lot of former Marlins just from that perspective itself. The jerseys looked really cool. Yuri Perez made his debut on the Flashback Friday, and that was probably one of the cooler moments of the season, despite the result of that game. It's definitely tough, but man, when you look at those new jerseys, they look really nice. I love the black jersey with the white I think it's Marlins at the front. It looks really nice in person. Is it a little? I think the white is a little too bright, but that's it's fine. At night it looks nicer too. So, and then you have obviously the blue one, the teal one, I guess blue, that they've wanted to bring back for a while. So funny story, and I'm glad you shared this. Jason Latimer, who was the former Marlins PR guy at the head, he started this movement, you could say, to bring that blue spring training jersey into the season. So it was nice that they were finally able to do that despite him leaving. And I think he also had to do with adding that white on the Marlins on that black jersey. And I'm really curious to see what jersey they'll implement during spring training, because we obviously know the usual batting practice jersey, the one that blue jersey they use during spring. Are they going to use the new one, or are they going to stick to the old one? I do think they'll stick to bring out the new one. That would be pretty cool to check out during the spring itself. But there's obviously the chance where they just stick to the old one and save it. So if I had to predict, Sundays it'll probably be that blue jersey, and then Fridays you'll get that black one with the Caliente Rojo one on Saturdays. But man, I like the jerseys. I'm not complaining. I know a lot of people have their mixed reviews, but it's something that they had to do for a while, and it brings a little, some excitement to the Marlins offseason that we'll get into soon.
I agree. I think it does bring some type of buzz or excitement to a very quiet offseason for Miami. And I do like the blue uniforms. I do. And I'm glad they're keeping the City Connect ones. I am one of those fans that's a bit disappointed that the Flashback Friday jerseys that, they will be discontinued. I'm sure they'll still be selling them in the gift shops and whatnot, because that would be I guess a dumb decision to completely remove it from the merchandise. And that's good to know. I didn't know that we were going to be seeing those blue uniforms on Sundays. I thought it was more just whenever for home games.
I think it'll be Sundays. So
okay. Yeah. And then I think, from my opinion, for spring training, they're going to keep the old ones, because I feel like they're like a different type of blue, or like a light baby blue. So I
think
feel
it's the same blue.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, it's the same exact blue from what I saw, at least. But I don't know what they're going to use during spring. I would have to assume it's the old one that they had before. It would be a little weird if you use the new one. Maybe you bring it out for a game or two, but aside from that, I don't know.
And I want to get into now the state of the Marlins, so that we can wrap up our Fan Fest portion of the podcast. You mentioned a Sixto Sanchez question. I'm going to get into that in a bit. But overall, tell me just how was the atmosphere for the state of the Marlins and the type of questions? Were they productive questions? Did people leave there? Or did any were questions answered appropriately, or was just a lot of fluff talk? So tell me your dissection of the state of the Marlins.
Yeah. So, before the state of the Marlins, we got there about, 10, 20 minutes before, and fans are already talking, man. I mean, you could hear them talking about the issues with shortstop, how they still don't have a catcher. So, they're obviously a little, mad, but, now when it comes time to talk to the guy who makes the moves, that's when you have to tell yourself, am I really going to tell him what I think, or am I going to keep it moderated? Now, there's obviously some people who are like, why don't you sign someone? Like, this was a straight up question, since you guys can't afford Shohei Ohtani or Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and they started laughing, why maybe not go after someone like a JD Martinez or Justin Turner, who now signed with the Blue Jays? And, Bendix, he's an interesting guy. He's obviously one of the smarter guys in baseball, one of the smartest in baseball, but it was a lot of fluff, hey, we're still looking out there. There's a lot of guys left. We still have time to make moves. So it was a lot of the same there. And then they spoke a little bit about 2023. It definitely felt like the Marlins were trying to emphasize 2023. They made the postseason. They had a great year, and it's good to know, but man, you haven't spent a single major league dollar on a free agent, That's where it gets really tough. A lot of six-toe questions, a lot of questions about how to get into the industry. It was a lot of, I wouldn't say, and then, when Kyle Seeloff, who does the Marlins radio play-by-play, asks some questions, it was a lot of fluff. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. I would have been very surprised if they would have given out something, good to the fans. You would have maybe thought maybe Bendix would throw a little teaser. No, nothing. So certainly disappointing on that end. But hey, I mean, people still got their articles out of it. So that's
for sure.
The thing at the end. And, and then the Sixto question, they essentially just said, we're excited to see what Sixto brings to the table come spring training. There's not much more you can really say about this guy. He pitched in one game in all of 2023. There's not much more you could say about that.
Very true. It's a slow climb uphill for Sixto Sanchez and his comeback to Major League Baseball, and I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially in 2024. So I guess for his calendar or his comeback, I think it's more of a pressing matter in 2025. Because I was curious about Sixto. He's still in the system, and he came onto the scene guns blazing in 2020. So. Yeah, but he's an afterthought, and I mean that in a nice way because he's technically not going to be playing in 2024 for the Marlins. So he's an afterthought in that sense.
I'm sorry. Still in the 40 man. He's still in the 40 man. So I mean, they definitely still value the guy. It's just a matter of what type of role would he bring. And at this point, you are banking on either AAA depth or best case scenario, he's going to be a reliever for the big league roster. I mean, I think his days as a starter are more than over. It's unfortunate because that, along with Igor Perez and Sandy Alcantara, that would have been lethal. But unfortunately, things happen, and a lot of it's out of his control. And but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, the what if is always there because he is a flamethrower like Yuri and Sandy, and he has nasty stuff as well. But like Sixto's changeup was his second best pitch, and it was nasty because it was a hard, weird kind of changeup like Edward Cabrera's changeup. So. It's just one of those what ifs, and it's unfortunate. Things are out of your control, and that's just the way the baseball gods work. But I'm glad we're talking about player personnel now, and thank you, Kevin, for your dissection and your analysis of Fan Fest. So that was really cool, and thank you for everyone as well on Fish on First who attended and shared their analysis of Fan Fest. But let's move on to player personnel. We teased a little bit. You mentioned briefly about Vidal Brujan, Christian Betancourt not being at Fan Fest because they're playing in the Serie del Caribe. For their respective teams. So let's move on overall to the team and the way it looks today, January 31st. What has been, I gave my highlight, my bright spot of the offseason in episode 1, but what for you, if you were to pinpoint, I guess, one positive or like the highlight of this Marlins offseason, what would it be?
Development. I mean, Look at the guys they brought in. You bring in Gabe Kapler, who, whatever you may think about the guy's personality, he is a smart baseball mind. He was a part of the Dodgers organization that he was the farm director for the Dodgers, who had Corey Seager, Walker Buehler. You had
Dustin May, probably.
I think Dustin May. You had the shortstop Gavin Lux. I mean, he had talent, man, and he knew what to do. You bring in Rachel Balkovic, who that's going to be a hitter, in my opinion. It's just more of a hit or miss type of hire because you're going from coaching all the way to a front office role, which, she was a part of the Yankees organization, so they're certainly well known for what they do. I mean, Jason Dominguez, you look at Anthony Volpe, Oswald Peraza. I mean, they have guys. So that's certainly something to recognize there. And then you bring in Frankie Pilieri, who I'm very, very excited to see what he does. And that may be the biggest get in terms of just how important he's going to be for this team in terms of drafting. I mean, Alex, you know this more than anyone else. This is a team that has struggled to draft position players and develop them. Jacob Berry has struggled with the Marlins. Connor Scott is no longer a Marlin. JJ Bleday got traded on Fan Fest. And who's the other one? Khalil Watson got traded for Josh Bell. I mean, those are three guys who are no longer with the organization that were drafted under the Bruce Sherman era. And I want to say two of those guys were DJ Svilic, and those guys are not here anymore. And I know Frankie Pilieri with the Seattle Mariners, he's certainly a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. Look at the Mariners in the last couple of years. Emerson Hancock, George Kirby. I think Harry Ford may have been a draft pick. I mean, you look at the guys, even Jared Kelenic, who they traded for, but still, I mean, you must have had some sort of interest in him during the draft to have acquired him after. But they're a successful team when it comes to developing players. They have a pretty damn good farm system. And then the other thing I'm very excited about is the international side of things. I mean, they had a very good international class. One of the better pitchers in the class itself, Jose Paulino. You bring in the top guy, Luis Cova, followed by Ramon Castro. And then now in 2025, you're bringing in Andrew Salas, who brother of Ethan and Jose Salas. Right. He may be the best out of the three. That's what I'm hearing. I think this guy is really, really good. A little weird. They moved him off a shortstop at 16 years old, but he's going to get almost $5 million or $4 million. And this is under Ozzo Campo, who you look back at his days in Houston, Jose Urquidy, Frambo Valdez, Christian Javier. I mean, those are all his guys who he brought in through the international market. And if you look at what Peter Bendix has been saying since day one, he wants to change the infrastructure of this organization. And man, I love what he's done in terms of the front office hires. Unfortunately, it hasn't led to much major league movement, and that's where we'll probably get into soon. But Bendix is a smart guy. He knows where he's coming from, and he's making all these minor league signings for a reason. And man, at some point we'll get a trade. We'll get something. It's going to be it'll be very weird if they don't make a single major league signing, and it's bound to happen. Whoever it is, a reliever, or a shortstop, even if it's Adalberto Mondesi, who was in the rumors the other day, they're bound to do it. But you look at the infrastructure of this organization, it looks a lot better. And I even forgot Brandon Mann, who comes from, I think, Driveline. That's a very analytical pitching organization that does a lot of work with pitchers. That is a great one. I spoke actually to AJ Puck not too long ago about this, and he spoke very highly of Brandon Mann and the work that he's been able to do. So that's definitely another guy who we should look out for. This is an organization that's very good at developing pitching. Now you got to do it with the hitters, and I think they brought the right people to do it.
For sure. And I feel like the Marlins have been cursed for years now in terms of developing position players. I totally forgot. You mentioned Khalil Watson and all these other guys that they traded away for big league talent. I mean, those were, I guess, the Marlins' top position players in terms of talent wise and trajectory. Oh, wow, yeah. They traded Khalil Watson for Josh Bell, and that was my highlight of the offseason. It was Josh Bell deciding to return to the Miami Marlins. That's from a player personnel standpoint. That's great to know, especially for our listeners. The minor league moves and the international moves that the Marlins have made, because like I said in my first episode of this season, those are the type of moves that are not going to garner a lot of headlines and a lot of traction through social media and whatnot. But hearing what you had to say and realizing that, the Marlins are going from the ground up. It sucks, especially from a fan standpoint, because here we go again. But this is something that needed to be done. The Marlins farm system has been depleted and has been poorly run, for lack of a better term, in terms of just finally, when are we going to see somebody come up other than like a pitcher here and there that's going to make an impact, So these international signings are huge because the Marlins have dipped into their pockets for international players, and it has backfired, a la the Mesa brothers, So that we don't, as fans, we cannot see that happen again. They have to strike gold on one of these guys, and it's a good thing that you're mentioning these people that are coming from other organizations now they're with the Marlins, that they at least they have a track record of finding talent and recognizing talent and molding that talent into big league ready players. So
at the end of the day, sorry to cut you off, but at the end of the day, you have to think about it. I mean, Peter Bendix comes from the Rays. I mean, the biggest contract they've ever given out was Zach Eflin. That tells you a lot. And that was just what, last year? I mean, look, this had to be done at some point, no matter who was at the helm, no matter if it was Kim, Mike Hill, anyone. This had to be done. I mean, this farm system, man, may as well be maybe the worst in baseball. Or you look at Houston, you're looking around that area, like maybe top 5, top 3 worst farm systems in baseball. I mean, your best position player prospect till one point, no offense to him, he was a really good baseball player in minor leagues. Troy Johnson was at this point maybe one of your best position players, and he is almost 27 years old when the season starts. So that tells you just where this system was at. And, you know, it's very little moves that were made right now, but you look at who they brought in through minor league deals, through small trades, whatever it is, the farm system got better. You added a really good outfielder in Luis Cova. You added some pretty good pitching. I like the catching that they brought into through the international class. And eventually, maybe right now it's not making headlines, but it will make headlines for the Marlins very soon. I do think right now under Ozzo Campo, who told us that right now they're not looking to replace that original senior director of amateur scouting operations. He's going to take that over, and he is very, very he is very knowledgeable when it comes to that part of the organization. So I'm interested to see what happens, you know, not only 2025, now we know who the headline signing will be, just moving forward, because a lot of these deals are materialized. And that's the one thing with this market. International market, these deals are materialized years in advance. So, for example, Cova has had this deal with the Marlins since, I want to say, 2022, 2021. I mean, this guy's been wearing that Marlins hat and shirt for a very long time in his workouts. And same thing goes with now Andrew Salas, who's coming to the organization next year officially. So, I mean, you look at Salas, that guy will probably maybe be the number 1 prospect in the organization entering right. You know, if I had to rank him right now, he would be number 1. Cova would be maybe 3 or 4. So certainly something to look at, especially that area. I mean, the Rays have really knocked out that. They've done really well for themselves. And we won't talk about him right now, but Wander Franco was one very good international signing. Won't mention anything anymore about him. Junior Caminero, another very good one. I mean, I think maybe Randy was a trade, but still, very small trades like that end up working out. Yandy Diaz, another one who I believe was an international signing. I mean, the Rays have hit. If it's trades, if it's anything, this is an organization that has built themselves on farm system and development and international signings. And they've done it. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They've done it and they've hammered it down. Now that's why they're able to spend a little more. That's why you see them handing out the contracts that maybe now they wouldn't have done a couple years back. Eflin, even the Wander Franco extension, they gave that one out. No matter what happened after that, they gave it out and they believed. And, you know, now let's see what happens there in that situation. But, you know, they're giving these out. And that's why we're hearing Jesus Luzardo trade rumors. I mean, exactly like the Blake Snell stuff. But, you know, that's for another day, because hopefully Luzardo's still a Marlin and he is the opening day starter. But it was very heavy on front office this offseason. And that's the best way to put it. I don't even think it's a rebuild. It's more of a retool. And I don't disagree with it. This had to happen at some point.
Yeah, I gave my 2 cents about the Luzardo and Braxton Garrett rumors. If you're gonna go full rebuild, then you trade him. You know, it's, you know, if, ands, or buts. If that's the route you're gonna take in terms of Peter Bendix in the front office, then you do it. And you're damn sure that you get some good prospects in return. You know, because that's the point of these trades. You're getting rid of your 2 best pitchers right now, if it does happen. On the other hand, they stay on the roster, then at least you have your 1 and 2 going into this season, and you can still, you know, hopefully, you know, remain competitive. I like Peter Bendix so far, you know, in terms of like what he's doing from behind the scenes and building from the ground up, because they said it needed to be done, because you're not going to have a future if you continue rolling out the same type of prospects, and also if you're trying to plug in holes by trading away decent prospects for ready major league players that are ready now, but they might not be committed to you in the long run. And so, like Josh Bell and Berger, at least he's under team control for a few years. But that's just, you know, a very rare occasion of a player being under control for that long of a time and that type of talent. So I just feel like the Marlins needed to get into that race philosophy, because for the last few years, even with Mattingly around, they were always on the fence of, well, are we going to spend money Are we gonna, develop talent and be a small market team? They were always kind of like, sometimes they'll spend and sometimes they won't. And some, it was kind of 50-50 with these type of things. So at least they have an identity. At least they have a path and a game plan. And then that's going to start from the ground up. And it's just going to spread through the whole entire organization, kind of like what the Rays did. Because now when you think of the Rays as a baseball fan, you think of success, but also small market. And that's the identity the Marlins have to take. It is what it is. I'm not saying you have to mimic everything that the Rays are doing, because sometimes if you copy too much, then you're not creating your own identity, and you're just trying to recreate something that's not granted. It's not going to grant you. It's not going to be a surefire thing that you're going to have the same amount of success as the Rays. But at least bringing an identity and some type of culture and philosophy, it was the right thing to do, because the Marlins didn't have any identity. The Marlins we said, we're going to be a small ball team last year, and we're going to move runners over, and we're going to steal bases, and we're going to and at the end of the day, they still had a mediocre offense. They still had they were a struggling team to score runs. So at least now they have a path, and they know what they want to do. And that reflects on the type of players they're going to put on the field based off their game plan and their budget. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they put out there, because right now the roster, it's kind of intact from last year, but not really. There's some bench pieces, some other guys, some minor players that have moved on. So we're going to get into that now, and then get into now the spring training talk. And let's talk, we mentioned some young guys, some international signings, so that's good. But let's get into more of the big league players. And Kevin, I want to talk to you about, the spring training, any position battles that you are looking forward to, or anything that catches your eye that maybe Marlins fans haven't noticed yet.
Shortstop. That's the big one. Right now they have not signed a major league shortstop to a major league deal. Right now, if you're going into opening day 2024, you technically don't have a shortstop, because as much as I like John Birdie, I just don't think he could stick at that position for 162 games. You kind of are right now. I think that position battle between three guys: Jacob Amaya, who's at the minor league level with the Marlins. He came up for a very quick cup of coffee. Yeah. Xavier Edwards, who we've seen a lot of back and forth in terms of where he'll play, and John Birdie, who has the experience, had a very nice year for the Marlins. So yeah, that's the other one. But that's the one I'm looking at. If Jacob Amaya's glove is probably the best out of the three. He is a very good defensive shortstop. His defense was compared to Miguel Rojas when he was traded here to Miami, and when Miggy went to LA. But the bat just wasn't there. And it was there. It was there for Jacob Amaya in the first half of the AAA season, all the way up to before he got called up. I don't know if it was maybe a motivation type of thing, that his motivation got crushed after getting sent down. I don't know if it was any of that, but he goes down and starts to struggle again. I really do hope he could get it with the bat. If he could at least hit you for league average, be a 90 to 95 to 100 WRC plus type of guy, where 100's league average, you take that. And that guy has control, and he has time. He has time to still develop, especially in a retool year where the Marlins aren't really banking on much. Mm-hmm. He has time. Xavier Edwards, I really don't know where I see him right now. I think the bat is great. His offense is great. Unfortunately, he is not a DH. It's really hard to spend a spot there for a guy who, at his absolute floor, he's like a Garrett Hampson, where he's going to be a pinch runner, defensive replacement at times. We know we saw him at center field during the AAA season. We heard from Skip that center field was going to be in the plans for him, but then we hear from Peter Bendix that they're going to give him every shot possible to play shortstop. And I really don't know where I'm leaning towards. If you could find some sort of combination between both, kind of like I heard this name today, Tommy Edman, where you have him at center and short. No, Tommy Edman's the absolute best possible option in terms of what type of player you would like Xavier Edwards to be. That guy is a Gold Glove winner, both at short and center. So, you kind of look at yourself there. And then Birdie, Birdie is you would like to keep him at utility. He had dealt with a lot of injuries last year in terms of undisclosed injuries. He dealt with a lot of those, which prevented him from being the John Birdie we saw in 2022. But that's the big one I'm looking at. Aside from that, man, first base is a position I'll be looking at just to see who they bring in to back up. We know they brought in Trey Mancini kind of into that Yuli Gurriel role, so I'm interested to see because just like Gurriel and Jose Iglesias, Mancini has the opt-outs in his deal. So if he sees a chance that maybe he's not making the opening day roster, or he's going to stick at AAA for a while, he could opt out and leave, and that would leave you with Troy Johnston and possibly Luis Ariz as your backup. That's really the only one other I'm looking at. I would like to see what they do at third base, because Jake Berger, as good as he was with the Marlins last year offensively, he was able to hold it down at third for the most part. But I want to see who they have as a backup. I mean, look, at the end of the day, what I'm looking at is what depth pieces will step up when guys go down, and which guys will step in when guys are, like arrested. Like one day Josh Bell is resting, who do you bring in? And what guys do you bring in that will produce? Because let's be honest, they lost 36 home runs out of that lineup. Jorge Soler most likely will not be a Marlin in 2024. And that's it. And Jake Berger may not be that 300 hitter. Josh Bell, no offense, he may get traded halfway through the year. That is the easiest player right now that I would say is a trade candidate going into the year. Unless they're winning, he's getting traded, and they're probably going to take that money. So you have to really look at the depth of this team. I mean, we're already seeing teams drop their NRI rosters and which guys will be non-roster invitees. We know a couple of them, with the minor league signings that they've made, Mancini being the biggest one. But I'm interested to see what, the Troy Johnstons, what Victor Mesa Jr. does in spring training now that he's on the 40-man. I'm interested to see what those type of guys do. And, looking at the system, you kind of hope that someone like, I don't even know, man. I mean, this system doesn't have many MLB-ready guys. One name I'll throw out there, no one's heard of this one. Jake Thompson. He started at Beloit last year. He was an outfielder, first baseman type guy. Finished with Pensacola. He was hitting over 300 the whole year. He's getting up there in age. He's probably a guy who I may see shoot up through the minor league system a little bit quicker just due to age. And if Troy does make it to the big league roster at some point, that is a guy who probably fills in for him at first base. But the other name I'm really intrigued to look at is Jacob Berry. He had a very decent Arizona Fall League stint. That's one who I'm very excited to see what he could provide for this team, because if you remove him from third base, Jacob Berry's offense, I feel like, would get so much better. You don't have to worry about third as something that's bearing you down right now. And I think he would honestly be a big leaguer a lot quicker than people would think if he sticks at first or DH. I mean, you need a first baseman. You're going to need it one way or another, no matter what happens. So that's definitely one thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that breakdown, Kevin, especially like with all those younger players and all those depth pieces, if you will. And you mentioned Yuli Gurriel and Garrett Hampson, and I mentioned them too in last episode because those were, I think, valuable pieces off the Marlins bench. Yuli came up with big hits, that veteran presence. Garrett is a kind of like another John Birdie utility guy. Played center, played short, can put him anywhere except for the pitcher and catcher. And he's a fast runner. He's a threat on the base pass. And you combine that with Birdie and Chisholm and other speedy guys the Marlins had, like Xavier Edwards. It's a pretty good, tandem to have, but he's gone. I think he's with Kansas City. Yuli's opted out to free agency. And I can see Xavier Edwards, right, there's not enough, positions for him on the field, but I can see him as a valuable bench piece. But then again, do you want a young guy like that sitting on the bench and not getting everyday reps? So you might, unfortunately, have to see Xavier you might see him in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
And, speaking as well of other players, Bell, I didn't even think about that, of him being a trade piece if things are going south for the Marlins. Now, that makes total sense. Why keep him around? And yeah, other than Mancini, there hasn't been, I guess, like former big league players that the Marlins have signed to, like, with minor league deals to invite to spring training. I know they brought back Jonathan Davis on a minor league deal. Devin Smeltzer.
That's depth. Jonathan Davis is depth.
There's a depth piece. Devin Smeltzer as well. Yeah.
Especially for Jazz. When he's out, Davis is pretty good.
Davis did definitely held his own as a replacement player. Devin Smeltzer, another depth piece just for the rotation. He can become in relief as well as a lefty specialist, just like moves like that they've made, which is fine. Every team does it, and I totally agree with you as well in terms of Victor Mesa, and he's on the 40-man now, and let's see how he does, and giving a larger role. He's kind of been an afterthought as well in terms of like, when is this player going to be ready to get to the big leagues and be a formidable player. So we'll see with that. But I want to get into the outfield situation a little bit. I know you mentioned it's crazy how, with the shortstop situation, the Marlins are coming from a combination of Joey Wendell and John Birdie. And there's no offense to those guys. They've had careers in Major League Baseball, but it's like, well, it can't get much worse than this. And I think it has. It really has. And like, when your combination at shortstop is now John Birdie, Xavier Edwards, Jacob Amaya, it's like, first off, you don't even know who your starter is. And second off, you question their ability to be an everyday starter for a major league ball club at shortstop out of all positions. So that's a huge red flag and a huge question mark. And that's and then Berger, I can see him being more DH, but then who do you replace him at third? So you make a good point there. So yeah, there's still a lot of question marks in the infield. Bell and Arise are pretty much like the only mainstays, with their positions in the infield. Let's go to the outfield for a little bit here. When I was on the pod, Big Fish, Small Pod with Danny Rodriguez, Fish on First, he asked me who was my pick for breakout player for the Marlins. And for some reason, I still don't know why, but for some reason, when I listened to it, I met like the first player that came to mind. So I said, screw it, I'm going to go with it, was Avi Garcia. And I get it. He has not been a fan favorite down here. But when you look at this roster and how thin they are in the power position, you just mentioned 36 home runs are gone, and he might not be coming back with Jorge Soler. So you mentioned the power in this lineup, the lack of it. He can provide it. He has proven it is in his track record, not in a Marlins uniform, but the previous decade practically that he spent in Major League Baseball, he has shown that a track record of at least getting you 15 home runs. So, but I know that Avi is on thin ice right now with this organization. This is legit his last stand. This is his last opportunity to make a point that, hey, like I'm a serviceable player. Like put me into play. Mm-hmm. I see him in the mix. Jesus Sanchez, Brian De La Cruz, Jazz Chisholm. But other than that, it's like, okay, is this it then? Or is there anything else going to be happening here? So you tell me, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I was mentioning this as an idea very, very early on in the offseason. Like, sell high on Brian De La Cruz. Try to get something for Brian De La Cruz.
Okay.
And obviously,
interesting.
This is a guy who's having one really strong rookie campaign when he first got to the Marlins, mm-hmm. and he improved, and then he did it again. Maybe try to sell high, because this is a guy who we've seen it. He's a very streaky player, and you don't know if he could consistently stick, offensively, if he could have some offensive consistency. Yeah. So I would have said sell high on him, because you have to keep in mind, Avi Garcia is still here for this year and next year, and possibly mm-hmm. a third year after that if somehow he performs in the Marlins accept the club option, which is very, very unlikely. But
right,
you look at it, I mean, Avi Garcia's here. You saw Jonathan Davis, as you mentioned. I mean, Peyton Bendix still on the 40-man roster. Mm-hmm. Victor Mesa Jr., if at some point he decides, if they decide to bring him up. I mean, aside from that, man, it's just such a tough system to say we have depth. They brought in some guys, Diego Infante. They brought this guy, Diego Infante, 24-year-old on a minor league deal. You still have some pretty old guys over there at AAA. I mean, it's just a matter of the depth on this team, what trades you're going to make. And Trey Mancini could play you the outfielder if you really need at the end of the day. I don't think that'll happen at this point in his career, but he's listed as an outfielder on the MLB transactions page. So, that's another thing too I've been thinking, Alex, trust me. I mean, Avi Garcia is still on this team. He's making, I think, either the most money or the second most money on this team behind Josh Bell. So that's a guy who they're going to play, and they have to. I mean, they're not going to sit a guy who they're paying almost $13 million on the bench. I mean, it's just tough to see. Unless he really, really just is not good during spring training or comes out of the gates and is not good, he will be a Marlin. So, I mean, we have to like it or not. I really can't remember a case of the Rays cutting a player with multiple years left on their deal. I really just can't. So I don't think Peter would do that. I know Kim maybe would have done that. She would have eaten the money. Miami was ready to eat the money if they had to. And, they're not gonna eat it here. I don't think they really will. And you kind of hope Avi gets it going. He has a chance, man. He was slimmed down. I know people make the jokes about Slim Avi, but I think got it going a little bit in that Cleveland series last season, right before he went down. I really think he was starting to turn it, but we'll see. I'm not very hopeful.
I get that.
I hope he does well, but spring training is going to be huge for him. If he could get it going during spring, I mean, that would be huge. And we'll see, because you still have Jesus Sanchez, who I haven't even mentioned him. He struggles against lefties. He said he still wants to face lefties. So I'm really interested to see what they go about this, because it's not like either you have 3 Gold Glovers out there, 3 really good defenders out there. I mean, they're all pretty not very good defenders, except Jazz, who actually was pretty good in the outfield this season for Miami in that limited sample size. You look at the corners. Brian De La Cruz is not a very good left fielder. So what are you going to do there? Who are you going to platoon? I mean, there's a lot of questions that will be answered during spring training. Right now, if I had to choose, probably Avi Garcia on right, Jazz in center, and maybe a platoon of DLC and Sanchi and left, with Avi Garcia playing some left field at sometimes too. So the other one goes to right. That's a really good point that you bring up in terms of the outfield. That's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and it's just you go around the diamond, and even the pitching rotation. There's question marks all over the field. There's, I think, Bell and Arias and Chisholm. Those are the mainstays in their positions, and everything else is kind of a question mark. We have a very good, or kind of a general idea of who's going to be the starter. Like you mentioned, De La Cruz, Avi, like you have a good idea, but at the end of the day, like this, I feel like other than the three players I just mentioned, Chisholm, Arias, and Bell, I feel like it's a team full of replacement level type of players, that you guys who are like on the brink and just can't get it there to be an everyday consistent Major League Baseball player. And De La Cruz, still had a great season in my opinion. I still think he was very serviceable, and I think he did his job. Jesus, it'll be nice if you can hit lefties, but at least you have that depth piece, I guess, with Avi. But you don't want a guy making that much money being a depth piece coming off the bench or platooning. So exactly. That's kind of the red flags in the outfield. We talked about the infield already. The catching situation, I'll be brief with it. It is not good right now with Fortes and Betancourt. I forgot to mention Vidal Brujan as well. He plays infield and outfield. So let's see what you can throw him into the mix of other, I guess, more mid-level replacement type of players. It's just another one in the mix.
Too. Yeah, he struggled at the big league level. So I mean, we'll see what they get from him. I mean,
his only
not to say he's a DFA candidate. Not to say he's a DFA candidate, but that is one that I think about. If he's struggling right out the gate, I mean, you could cut your ties with him real quick.
The only positive I give him is that he's a switch hitter. So, and he can play multiple positions. But if you can't hit, you can't hit. Doesn't matter from what side of the plate.
Yeah.
The catching platoon right now is Christian Betancourt, another former Rays player like Vidal, and Nick Fortes. We don't have to get into this much, Kevin. I know Nick Fortes has his struggles behind the plate defensively and offensively. I'm not too familiar with Christian Betancourt. They do say from the reports that I've read that he will help with the running game. I don't know how much that will be and how much the needle will be moved in that sense. But what can you tell me about Christian Betancourt?
Power. I think he's a pretty good power hitter, so I'm pretty excited about that. I know Zips has him projected about 11 home runs, so that's pretty good. You just kind of hope he gives you like that Oakland Athletics Christian Betancourt that was traded mid-season to the Rays. We won't get into it too much, but yeah, I mean, you were there. We were both there in that Tampa series when Miami went up there to drop, and he was throwing guys out left and right, man. He got Jesus Sanchez out at third. He was catching everyone. So it's pretty funny because Betancourt is really good at limiting runners, movement on base, when someone like Nick Fortes is really struggling at that, but he's a very good blocker. So you kind of wish you had both of those abilities. But I mean, man, I wouldn't shock me if Miami brings in a third catcher, at least some sort of minor league deal type of guy, like Yasmani Grandal's still out on the market. That's the name I would love Miami to bring in. Just kind of was pretty good for them. Andrew Kisner was someone who I would have liked them to bring in, but I'm trying to remember catchers right now on the market, but I wouldn't shock me if they bring in another one on a minor league deal with an invite. They did actually. Johnny Parada. So he's actually at AAA. He was really, really good. He hit over 300 there. So interesting to see what they'll do there. Maybe they bring another one with more major league experience. So that's something I'm looking at, because if you look at the Rays the last couple of years on their 40-man or 26-man roster, they've had 3 catchers on there consistently. So last year they had Rene Pinto, Francisco Mejia, and Christian Betancourt. They used all 3. No matter what game, what day, they used all 3, and they had their reasoning why. Betancourt was really good defensively. He could get it going with bat sometimes. Mejia, I mean, I really wanted him here in Miami. I think he could have been a great bounce back candidate. Then Rene Pinto is really good defensively. So they have their reasons for each guy while they'll use them. And it wouldn't shock me if Miami at some point does it, especially with what they have at the minor league level. Paul McIntosh, pretty good bat, really just struggles on the defensive end. And then Will Banfield, who was he was really good power, over 20 home run season. This was his first real good offensive season, but we'll see what they do at that end. But, at least it isn't Jacob Stallings, and that's what I'll say. Wishing him the best. He actually got a major league deal with Colorado, so maybe a little 10 home run season incoming for him.
Yeah, because playing Coors Field and whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, we wish Stallings the best. Marlins made an attempt with him. He was coming off a Gold Glove year. Just didn't work out here in Miami.
Sandy
It
won the Cy
happens.
Young. Sandy won the
Huh?
Cy Young. He was his catcher.
Yes, and Sandy did create a good connection with Stallings. So there was, I guess, some positive doing his short tenure here in Miami. And I appreciate that breakdown of the catching position for our listeners not really are too familiar with the depth behind the plate beyond the major league level, because we know Fortes and Betancourt, but there is some options the minor league level. You mentioned with Banfield and McIntosh as well. But I agree with you. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they have a 3-catcher system. Slowly but surely, we are going to see some type of Tampa Bay Rays influence injected into this ball club, and kind of just like slowly bring in that philosophy. The only thing I'm worried about is don't mimic, like don't copy and paste this thing, because that's where you get
Exactly.
yourself in trouble. You got to, I guess, take things here and there from other teams if you want and make it your own thing and mold it into something of your own. So I think that the Marlins are kind of doing that with the Rays, getting the bits and pieces of what they're doing over there and kind of molding into their own thing here in Miami.
Yeah.
So we're gonna round things off of this episode with the final component of the roster, the major league roster, which is the pitching rotation, and talk about break down that rotation going to spring training. Just if you guys listen to the first episode and don't really know yet, haven't been like living under a rock in the baseball world, but Sandy Alcantara, he's out for 2024. So the Marlins lost their horse, they lost their ace. They're going into the season with Jesus Luzardo as their number one. He has the potential of being an ace. I'm not going to put him in that category yet, no disrespect, but he does. He has shown flashes of it and has the potential for it. Braxton Garrett is their number two. And Kevin, beyond that, other than Yuri Perez, who's going to be on an innings limit, obviously, but other than those 2.5 pitchers, what is this rotation going to look like in 2024? So I feel like there's a lot of question marks left to be answered.
Yeah, so Yuri may be on an innings limit, but he's still going to throw more than he did last year. Just looking at just overall combined between Double-A and the major leagues, he pitched, I believe, about 120 innings. I think he'll surpass that in 2024.
Okay.
That's what Skip told us on, I think, Fish on First not too long ago. So, yeah, there's that. And then, I mean, look, you lost Sandy, you lost about 200 innings, but
yeah,
this rotation's still not bad. This is probably one of the better rotations in at least the National League.
well, that's hopeful. Yeah.
Off with Jesus Luzardo, as you said, Braxton Garrett, if he continues what he's been doing, Yuri, and then, man, I mean, you really hope you're getting the Edward Cabrera that the Marlins thought. That was one of the bigger disappointments of the season with Edward. I hope he really gets it going, because if not, they have depth. And you're number 5, you kind of hope Trevor Rogers gets it going there too. And then you look a little deeper into the system. You have Max Meyer coming back, so I'm very excited to see what he does. He'll probably get some reps at AAA beforehand. You have Ryan Weathers, who you brought in from the Padres in that Garrett Cooper trade, and you keep looking down. Eventually, you have Pat Monteverde from the minor leagues, and you have someone like Dax Fulton to see when he comes back. So they have options. I don't think Dax Fulton will pitch much at all, actually, at the major league level, but they have their guys. And then you mentioned Devin Smeltzer. He's someone who can bring you some inning help there too. They brought in a couple like pitchers off of waiver claims, like Caleb Ort and some guys like that. So should be interesting where they go. And then AJ Puck, actually, I was
going to mention that.
He's going to start spring training games for the Marlins. So
interesting.
That could definitely be an interesting development there. See how it goes. He was a very good starter with Florida. So the Gators. So should be interesting. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what Ryan Weathers does, though. He's coming from the minor league system, the PCL league, the Pacific Coast League, which is by far the hardest minor league to pitch in, because if you thought Coors is hard to pitch in, that is maybe as hard or even harder. And he was talking about it in the Marlins Hot Stove show. He was on that not too long ago, and he was mentioning I've pitched in the playoffs, I've pitched in all these scenarios. That league was probably the hardest one I've ever pitched in. And you want things to move some sort of way when you're throwing your pitches. It's just unable to happen there. And I think now a full off season for him, someone who was regarded as one of the best prospects in the Padres. He was called up a little too early for people's liking, but let's see what he does. I mean, he's gonna work with Mel. and he's going to have a chance to really crack this rotation, especially if someone like Edward Cabrera struggles. I mean, if he struggles during the spring, you really got to start looking into trading him. I'm surprised he hasn't been traded. I would like him to get I wouldn't like him to get traded, but it would bring back prospect capital for the Marlins. And you look at some teams, Chicago still needs pitching, and they have Christopher Morel there, who may not even get traded at some point. You look at Baltimore, who always needs pitching. They have some really good prospects that you could trade that won't make any type of impact at the big league level, just due to, you have a guy like Jackson Holiday coming up soon. Gunnar Henderson's still there. You have a really good team there. So they have their options. And the same goes to someone like Luzardo. I mean, if they end up trading Luzardo, it would be kind of the Blake Snell 2.0 situation, exactly the same situation. Still 3 years left remaining on Barb. You're going to trade him right after his best season, which was over 200 innings for Luzardo, over 200 strikeouts. It was a great year for Luzardo. So you look at it in that sense. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be still a really good rotation, man. I mean, look, I don't think Miami's going to make the playoffs by any means. I don't think they're going to be better than 84 wins, but 78, 80 wins, it's feasible, especially if everything goes well for the Marlins. I mean, the pitching, I think they have a lot better depth than they did last season, because especially bring back Devin Smeltzer, who, say whatever you want, minor league deal, whatever. He pitched pretty well for the Marlins at some points this season. He gave them a lot of length. You still have George Soriano, who gives you a lot of length too out of the bullpen. AJ Puck. I mean, look, they have depth, they have length in this rotation. I think they'll be fine without Sandy. I never thought I would say that, but definitely you're losing a guy. I mean, you're losing to Cy Young winner, but you still have some very, very good pitchers. I mean, Luzardo, Brax, and Yuri. I mean, that's your three, and you really hope Trevor Rogers gets it going, especially this year. I mean, I know he's coming off of an injury, but he looked like he was turning the corner right there at the end of the year. He had that good start against Arizona, and then he was really getting it going with against San Francisco when he came out. So I like this rotation, man. I really do. And the depth in it is really fun. I'm really excited to see what they do. Spring training is going to be extremely fun in terms of just what guys they utilize, how they utilize them. And, I'm very excited. Max Meyer's another one. That guy's coming off of TJ. He was the Marlins' top prospect at one point in this organization. And worst comes to worst, he's a really good reliever, but you would like to see him start. I would like to see him start, honestly. I mean, I think he's a starting pitcher still in this league.
Yeah, and you know what? And I agree with you and everything you said about the rotation. I think that this is the most exciting group of all the groups that we've kind of broke apart. The pitching rotation, I think, for me, is the most exciting in terms of what to look forward to, because I mentioned that they have like 2.5 pitchers. Obviously, it's an exaggeration. They got a formidable 3 starting pitchers with Yuri, Braxton, and Luzardo. But beyond that, there is depth. They have bodies. That's a fact. But the other side of the coin to that is, are they ready to take on it, to take that next step forward, to take that additional step ahead in terms of their progress and growth as major league pitchers? And I do like the idea of throwing in Puck. At this point, you got if you're going to work internally from within on how to replace Sandy or how to remain competitive without Sandy, then I'm all good with throwing Puck out there to see if he can be a starter. You have Soriano as well, as you mentioned. You have Weathers, who's another hard throwing lefty, and then we forget about Trevor Rogers. So there are pieces there. I'm most excited for is Max Meyer, though, because we just got like a small taste of what he can provide. Because of him going down with Tommy John. Yep. So yes, there is depth there. It's just they need to answer the bell now. They need to actually like produce on the field and to answer these type of question marks that we have about them. And Edward too, so it's like there's a lot of names out there that we threw out, and how with all those names in the mix, I'm very curious to see how they round off this rotation, because there's 2 spots open. There's 2 spots open, which is a lot. Most teams go in there with kind of the rotation already in place. Maybe with the last spot in the rotation is up for grabs. Throughout baseball, it's kind of like that. The Marlins, in their case, they got 2 openings in their starting rotation, because with Yuri, Braxton, Luzardo holding it down already. So I appreciate that dissection. And Kevin, we're rounding things off here. We're closing things off. Any final thoughts on the Marlins offseason or spring training? Anything else you have to say for us and your listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would say is a 6-man rotation is definitely still a possibility, no matter what. I mean, You look at guys that you don't want to get injured. Yuri's someone who, I mean, we've seen it. I mean, they want to be very conservative with this guy. They don't want him to get injured. So a 6-man rotation benefits someone like Yuri. It'll benefit someone like Trevor Rogers too with his injury and Edward, and it'll allow another pitcher to enter. So like a Max Meyer or Ryan Weathers. So that'll definitely be something I'm watching. And man, I mean, let's hope the Fish could surprise us again this season. I mean, it was a very, very fun year in 2023. No matter what states this team is in, we always have a good time at the ballpark, no matter what. So, I want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate it a lot. We'll catch each other probably soon at a spring training game, or
I'll be there
soon, and we'll be there. You'll be there at the City of Caribe. So I'll see you then. And thank you again for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. And guys, if you're listening, don't forget you can catch Kevin on Fish on First. They're on any streaming platform you can think of. Fish on First is there. You can also catch him here with the Lemon City Live family and his Paws Up podcast and his coverage of all of FIU athletics. He does an incredible job. He's all over the place. He's hustling. He's grinding. He's doing his thing, and he's on the come up, and he's continued to rise. Kevin Barral, thank you so much for being on, and we'll be back again for season 2, episode 3 of Fish of First Pitch 3. Man, you got me confused now. With all this, all these F words. With First Pitch 305, I'm your host Alex Aguirre, and don't forget, let's go Fish.